Now it is my honor to introduce our moderator, Mukul Ahuja. Mukul is partner, strategy, and artificial intelligence, financial services, and insurance leader at Omnia AI at Deloitte. Mukul is going to lead us through a fascinating discussion with his expert panelists on augmented intelligence and AI, how our relationship with smart technology will drive out performance. Over to you, Mukul.
Thanks, Joel, and welcome everybody to this topic, which is near and dear to my heart. I wanted to quickly introduce myself, partner in our AI strategy practice at Omnia AI and Deloitte, and really pleased to be a moderator today on the topic of augmented intelligence. One of my favorite topics to discuss with my clients and friends, because AI has become one of the most influential forces shaping what is possible in organizations today and how the future work will be performed. We started to move past the era of what we previously knew as assisted intelligence, where we saw organizations build capabilities around robotic process automation, chatbots, and automated flow of governed data and analytical insights. However, we're not quite at the stage of full-blown autonomous intelligence where machines can make intricate decisions and execute on them without human intervention. We're somewhere in between at the moment, which we're calling the age of width, where augmented intelligence brings together the power of machine learning and AI to enable people and teams to make smarter, faster decisions and take action based on the vast data sets and contextual information available today. The insurance sector in particular, where I spend most of my time, is undergoing historic levels of change and are moving quickly on the digital curve to remain relevant. Certainly in the times of COVID, where we've seen tremendous digital adoption, and you heard a lot about that earlier today as well. Many of the leaders I speak with who are responsible for the innovation and AI agenda are curious about how to leverage AI to solve business problems, if they haven't already, and the power it can have on the business, both on the customer journey and also across the value chain in sales, distribution, underwriting, claims, and into core operations. Questions being asked today are how to make that leap from assisted intelligence into adopting AI in impactful ways. What will this mean for operations and key business metrics, customer experience? And will advanced technologies replace human workers? If so, how quickly? Should I invest in machines or people or coordinated efforts across both? At Deloitte, we believe we are now in what we call the age of width, where organizations are harnessing the power of augmenting, not replacing human intelligence to identify unique advantages through the use of analytics, AI, and data. Think humans with machines, data with actions, companies working with their customers and partners. The results of these partnerships are insights that become automated, analysis that becomes insightful, and relevant information getting into the hands of the right folks at the right time. This is what we mean by when we talk about augmented intelligence, and that's the theme of the topic today. Here today to share their insights on augmented intelligence and some of the practical applications and what the future holds for the industry. I'm joined on this stage in this panel with three outstanding leaders in the market who have been making great strides in their own ways in the space, both within their organizations and with the clients and partners they serve. So please please join me in welcoming Abhay Raman from Sun Life, the Chief Security Officer, formerly the Chief Data Analytics Officer at Sun Life, one of the largest insurers here in Canada and globally. Also joining us from the cooperators is Clement Brunet, who's the VP Business Intelligence and the Chief Data Analytics Officer at the cooperators, and has spent a tremendous amount of effort from his background in banking and insurance, working on developing and adopting and exploring this capability and expanding this capability in his organizations. And last but not least, Jane Wang, who's the CEO and founder of Optimity, an InsurTech that is powered by a vast amount of data in understanding consumer behaviors and how that relates to health, wellness, and insurance at large. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining me today. Maybe as we tee off the conversation and get deeper into it, maybe a question for everyone as we go around the table, starting with Abhay and Clement and Jane. I want to begin with getting your perspectives on the outlook for augmented intelligence. Is the insurance industry truly moving in this direction? And where do you see it having the greatest uplift or impact in terms of some of the business use cases and value propositions today? So let's start there, and Abhay, if you want to tee up a bit of a perspective.
Sure. Happy to. So this would be my, I guess, 6th virtual presentation conference. So let's see how I make do here. When we look at AI and neural networks and the interest in all of this stuff, we find that insurance will shift from its current state of detect and repair, essentially, to a state where it is predict and prevent, and transform really every aspect of this industry in the process. There's the traditional stuff that we talk about around, accelerate change in how we deal with brokers, consumers, intermediaries, suppliers, etc. We'll have better productivity, lower costs, optimize our customer experience. But when you look at why, like what are the trends that are really shaping this sort of shift? And I think it's important to understand the motivation behind that is, one, there's explosion of data. You can get whatever data you want, wherever you want, however you want, as long as you know what you want. There's the increased prevalence of sort of physical robotics, what I call, in terms of monitoring, in terms of data creation, etc. We have a gazillion open source and data ecosystems that we could use. And lastly, we were just talking about this prior to this starting. We have advances in cognitive technologies that allow us to use these learning models, that allow us to understand what it is we're doing socially. And I think that's really, really important from a change perspective. It is a business that we think is going to impact, distribution significantly, underwriting and pricing. The nuts and bolts of the insurance business really going to be very much impacted by these sorts of technologies in terms of how it would help us improve that experience, the experience of underwriting, the experience of pricing, the experience of distribution, and significant amount of automation in the claims processing space with respect to routing, efficiency, accuracy, etc. So we do see a lot of operational benefits, but we also see a lot of social acceptance and adoption of insurance in general, because it becomes more explainable and more understandable in the future.
Thanks, Clement. Do you want to add to that in terms of maybe some practical uses that you have been working on, and what your view is about where we are in the journey, and what is the outlook in your perspective around this notion of augmented intelligence as it permeates through the insurance value chain, as Abhay alluded to?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to give a perspective from property and casualty insurance. So that's where the biggest part of our business is, and also my perspective comes from a medium-sized player. So we're not an insurance giant. So our journey through augmented intelligence is with medium-sized means. So you're going to find that you're going to find that dimension in my comments through today. The trends in the markets that set the stage are that our customer expectations are changing, and there's an acceptance and an expectations towards a digital offer. The transformation of transportation is also going to have an impact on our industry. So automobile insurance is becoming more of something that can easily be transacted online, and the overall risk related to automobile insurance is decreasing. And for those advice-based financial products like commercial insurance or wealth and life, the margins are shrinking, are becoming slimmer and slimmer. So that forces us to look at all our functions in our operations and identify what is core and what are core and strategic functions that we want to build a competitive advantage around, and those are the functions that we want to augment with artificial intelligence, and those support functions that are more things we have to do, but they don't translate into competitive advantage. So we want to look to automate these things. So this is on our side how we differentiate the the with versus the humans with machines or humans replaced by machines. So a couple examples. Setting case reserves. So case reserves is something we do in claims to estimate the ultimate value of a claim file. It is used mostly for financial purpose to make sure we have the right capital. Well, this is not direct value for the client. So this is something that we use, it's something that used to be done based on judgment by our claims experts, and it's something we automated with machine learning to allow our experts to really focus on the client experience. Natural hazard modeling is something that we decided would be part of our core advantage. We will compete on better segmentation. So we invested in our actuaries. So this is where you see the width. So our people augmented with intelligence. We use AI to have better flood models, better forest fire models, better, et cetera. Yeah, I'll stop here, and I'll have tons of examples throughout the day.
Yeah, some very practical examples there. Thanks, Clement. Maybe Jane, over to you, just coming from the InsurTech innovator, entrepreneur, data science lens, and how you partner with incumbents and thinking about the role of augmented intelligence and the role of data. Maybe your perspective on the outlook and some of the opportunities that you see on the horizon.
Yeah, I think I have so many common experiences. We were just talking in the green room before this with Abe and also with Clement. The volume of data that the consumer is currently generating or allowing us to have access to is tremendous. So for us in our own, it's more than 2 trillion data points and things like that. So it's something that I found in the past has been in the back office, right? It's something that a BI person or like someone with a spreadsheet or maybe some specific data tools can generate a couple answers to questions. Now people are expecting an experience, and that experience permeates through all avenues of the business. And where we add value at Optimity is that we work on the consumer experience, helping them to understand, to nurture them through a learning process along both the health spectrum. So naturally, we will work on different types of disease prevention, proactiveness. It's perfect for that type of sense. But we also do some cases where we're working on P&C. So for example, on the consumer side, we work with companies like Omnia, or even we work with tons of mid-sized carriers as well, along with some of the very sophisticated data players, such as the reinsurers or the Sun Lifes of the world. And I find that in my experience in the last 18 months has been that the consumer expectation for that digital experience has definitely, the bar has been pulled up. And the expectation now is that how are you using, I'm willing to share my data. How are you using that data to benefit me? So they're expecting a data connectivity. They're expecting a personalized experience. They're expecting use cases to be made in a succinct, clear way that helps their lives. And we help the carriers make that connection and also sometimes digest that data because it is overwhelming. Abby made a comment and I couldn't agree more with, right, with the trillions of like data points, people can't go through them. Big data, I think controversially last year, maybe the year before too, I said big data is garbage. Like it's not useful because you need someone in there cleaning this as fast as it was generated. And how do you use that for, you need clean data, you need data for action. And it's really about intentionally setting up the architecture to collect the right thing in the first place and to have a system for it to flow. And Abby, I don't know if you wanted to expand on that a little bit more, but like, I think that's the only way that we can put data into action through that expectation.
Oh, for sure. And I think your comment resonates a lot around people are willing to share their data, but they want to be part of that contract they set up with AI or that ecosystem, right? So, which is kind of neat because in the past, this would do it to you, as opposed to now you want to be part of that contract. And well, later on we'll talk a little bit about what that means ethically and what that means from a sort
regulatory
of oversight perspective. But so that's one really important point. And two, in my current role, I get to play with all of the stuff that I put in place in my previous role at Sun Life, where we look at how we're using infinite amount of data to look at our security related issues and end user threat and insider threat models and behavioral analysis about things, and it's fascinating the kinds of we call it our insight factory, because we've got one new insight a week. That's kind of the deal with the boys. That's what we're going to get. And as we kind of put one new insight together and we assemble these insights like a Lego block, you find that you learn so much about how we behave, how we log into systems, how much time we spend within systems, and all of those types of things that are fascinating, just purely from an academic perspective, but also fascinating from a security standpoint.
Yeah, thanks for that. Hopefully this gives the audience a really good view of two things I take away from this particular starting point, which is we're not talking about the hype around AI and what it might be in the future 10, 20 years out. These are practical, data-driven, insight-driven applications that we're seeing permeate through whether it's the PNC or life or the InsurTech and innovation ecosystems in the market. So hopefully that gives a good flavor and sets the stage for a deeper conversation, because this is really going to be about less the art of the possible and more the art of the practical in this conversation as we talk about this notion of augmented intelligence. So maybe building on that, Abhay, your organization, you mentioned, has really been leading the way in the Canadian market in terms of moving the needle on human-machine collaboration, for example, moving and hydrating, your data lakes with all the data, launching new AI services and platforms and partnerships, investing in training and upskilling of talent. So maybe tell us a little bit about the journey you've been on and overseeing around building out those data and augmented intelligence capabilities, and maybe some of the impacts these innovations, data-driven innovations and AI applications have had on your customers and partners and people within your organizations.
Sure, I like talking about that, but what I'll maybe towards the end, I want to spend some time on stuff we didn't do so well, because there's those, and hopefully, for the folks that hopefully you can do those parts well, because in hindsight maybe we should have thought about it a little better, but you always make mistakes. So I started with Sun Life as they called me and said, let's help move the needle, as you said, on data and AI and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of cool little project and thing to work on. So to get started, we really needed to get smart on what's involved. Needed to know, like, what do we need to know? So we needed to get us a beat on skills. We needed to get something on tools. We needed some technology knowledge. We needed the data, what are we going to play with? And we needed, most importantly, to understand how we engage with the business, what our operating model is going to be, how is it going to scale? Because I think that was the biggest, like everybody does AI in, is an experiment here, is an experiment there, there's a small little project there, there's a small little project there. How do you get a company to move in that direction? That was the problem statement. So we had all the traditional things. We put a strategy together. We said it was going to be a 3-year strategy. We said we were going to leverage the AWS ecosystem and use that for our data science purposes. And we said, here's a 3-year plan. And we stuck to the 3-year plan. We did, because technology moves around, data moves around, people's questions move around, lots of things moved. We stuck to that 3-year strategy. And that was really important because, it helped us build the foundation for what we really need to provide to the business. We spent a lot of time with the business trying to get an understanding of scenarios, use cases, etc., that we were going to launch. So we focused our data collection based on those use cases, because there's nothing like putting together a weight loss program and not seeing the needle go down. You need those short-term victories. You need that that sort of rise from, yes, I got this done, now I'm going to go to the next week, right? So we chunked it up in such a way that gave people that little bit of elation, the little success every single time. And I thought, in hindsight, if I was to do this again, I would do it exactly the same way, because people were happy, engaged, wanted to do the next one. And some of the things we wanted to do was, like, we engaged, we put some good partnerships through the process, so we got lucky there. We had a workable operating model with all our businesses, because one of the key tenets of our data science ecosystem really was, how are we democratizing this across the business? So we've got my IT team, then we've got all the data scientists, like, largely in the business working on things, because in the future, what I do think is going to happen is it's just going to be a tool. It's going to be like Excel. Everybody's going to have access to these capabilities. You just need to know when to use a VLOOKUP versus an HLOOKUP. And we enhanced our data management capabilities. So it was largely about making sure we can get clean data, lots of it, at the right time, in the right place, for somebody to go take a look at, understand, and do something about. In hindsight, so we also did a couple of other things around making it cool and sexy, so we could have more people apply, get more people to join our data science team, and do some very cool, interesting things, like, we built models which kind of said, can we identify when a person is calling into our call center, can we identify if the person is actually going to commit fraud? Can we identify if the person is trying to hide something but asking a different question? Because people do that in the health situation all the time. They really have some underlying condition, but they're asking you a question that's not directly that, but something else. So, so it was very neat in terms of that. When we look at models around physician fraud, then we look at models around drug use and implications for that. We have models around long-term disability, chances of people getting to that or not. So and these are sort of all in the business. And on the security side, we've got a gazillion models around end user behavior, who's emailing what out, when those things are happening, what types of logins happen, how are emails being filtered. Like, so it's quite fascinating, the ecosystem of types of things we're able to do now, just because of the base focus on getting the data part in reasonably well, and a tool set that we can all use. Because one of the things that I found personally, everybody has their own predisposition to tools. Some people like R, some other people like Python, some other people like Anaconda, some other people like this. So, we went through this discussion where we said, guys, we need to get to 2 or 3 tools and get really good at it. Because frankly, your clustering models, 5 of them, that's all you're going to use, regardless of how you implement them. The model's the model. So get really good at those tools. I think it was really important. We didn't do data governance very well. So we could have done ownership, lineage, those sorts of things well, because our struggle had to do with some of our systems are so large and so complex that they have so many multiple owners. So it's very difficult for us to attribute it to somebody. So, and that's something that we're still struggling with. And we would have approached our talent pipeline and how we would have done things maybe a little better. We found talent extremely hard to come by. And we wanted to create these centers of expertise or centers of excellence for various things. And I remember talking to somebody who said, this is the first time you're doing it. How are you creating a center of excellence? And which I was kind of humorous. We couldn't staff these things. So we engaged in sort of various partnerships with folks who had these sorts of capabilities, universities, because right now on my security side, I work with the University of Toronto, for example, in their PhD program, and we get, so we managed to publish a couple of papers, etc. So I'll take the talent wherever I can get it. But that's another thing that maybe I would have been a bit more deliberate about as we went about it. But all in all, it's worked out extremely well. So, touch wood.
Thanks for that, Abhay. So that's a really good articulation and summary of the journey itself, but also some of the almost, hopefully everyone's capturing some of this, and this is recorded, so we'll get a really good list of some of those use case ideas, but also some practical lessons learned. Maybe I'll bring Clement and Jane into this as you think about, specifically, we spoke a lot about data and standardized tools, but the talent dimension and the partnerships aspects, the build by partner considerations are such an important component of this. So maybe over to Clement to just share, from your standpoint, some of the challenges in exploring AI-driven solutions and those opportunities are naturally different from InsurTech. We'll get Jane weigh in as well. In addition to figuring out the right strategic path and focus in leveraging these opportunities, there's some hurdles around talent acquisition, change management, upskilling to operationalize and adopt these solutions. So do you have a perspective of some of these challenges? And maybe Jane, you can share also some of your challenges on the partnering side and how you worked around implementing and adopting data-driven and AI solutions. So let's start with Clement first.
Thank you. So I think there's two parts to your questions, at least two parts that I want to address quickly. About the talent and the sourcing, we've struggled with the decisions, do we invest in internal talent versus working out with vendors or partnerships, et cetera. We realized that with partnerships and vendors, that allows us to follow the industry or keep pace with the industry is going and go fast. But when we have unique problems to solve or we want to create a unique competitive advantage, this is where the internal investing in internal talent really worked for us. So I'll give an example of we used AI to we created an app to support our commercial insurance underwriting. So when our advisors meet with a business, they have to codify the business based on what it does. And really, there's like 14,000 codes. So there's lots of error. There's lots of data quality issues, and it has an impact on pricing if they codify it wrong, et cetera. So we used AI to, so our AI systems really read 80,000 pages of business description and was trained on those that data, and then our advisors are able to describe it with their voice, with their phone, what the business is about, and there's a little exchange of decision tree questions, and then boom, they get the industry code. This was a unique problem for the cooperators. There was no solution outside in the market to do this. So that's one. So the struggle between internal and external, I think we learned it the hard way. The other point I quickly wanted to mention is change management. This is also a big challenge to overcome. I remember many years ago, going to our sales force, our distribution people are saying, I can predict churn. I can tell you that this customer is a high risk of leaving the organization. My question was, what are you going to do different with that information? And their answer was nothing. I don't know. And we treat all our customers the same way. So I had the data science and the AI and machine learning part figured out, but we never thought this would be the biggest challenge, the actual translation between insight to action.
Yeah, maybe Jane, over to you as you think about the mix of built by partner decisions carriers make, and also the need and kind of the ability to leverage more than just historical data and new and different types of data, behavioral data that comes with changing consumer behaviors and what's happening in the market. Maybe you can speak to a couple of those, both the partnership aspects as well as the role innovators and solution providers play in providing new data sets, new vantage points to the opportunities.
Yeah, sure. So I can start from the type of data being generated, and we're going to release a consumer insights report that really kind of details the type of stuff that we can get from the user. And what's fascinating is it's not just prescription medication anymore, or it's not, it's really kind of multifaceted. And what's interesting in the way that we're doing it is that we're getting intention data, so forward-looking info. So in the same way that Google is very powerful because it's search data, it's like what you're looking for, and Amazon's really powerful because it's buying data, it's what you put your money on. What's interesting with us, because we're about self-actualization for someone wanting to live a long and healthy life, they'll tell us, hey, I am moving in the next year, or hey, I've just moved, I need a new dentist, right? Like, and you can very easily see how we could link up with everything from a solution like Illumino to a questionnaire for the user being like, hey, how do you want to do that? What is the short time goals that you have? So what we learned in our consumer insights report this year, and I mean, this question has been asked over the last 4 years. We did not publish anything in 2020, but in 2021, we're kind of going back and comparing it to the 2019 data. And I was just highlighting it yesterday in another group session, is that 80% of people are now, right, they've socially isolated. 60-something% of people are talking about mental health issues. And there's a huge proportion of people also putting their hands up for financial help and support, just because the ups and downs of the market, there's exciting things happening with the ability to buy stocks and invest. And then there's also scary things happening with different use cases that kind of grew out of proportion. And the consumers remember that, and they want help. So when we learn these insights, I think the collaboration that we had with the carrier has now crystallized into something a lot more operational, whereas in the past, a lot of the work that we've done were in innovation, which is like, give us all the data, we'll look at underwriting models, let's look at how steps can play into underwriting, let's look at maybe, dentist visits as a correlator to longevity. Like it's experimental, it's awesome, working with the actuaries, working with the underwriters, that's fun. But in the last 18 months, it has been, oh my gosh, how do we operationalize this? And how do we talk to the consumer in the way that they want to talk to us? And how do we operationalize that into more sales or into more advisory conversations and things like that. So, and that's a place where I found a pure digital play where we are personalizing content. And that's how we use AI a lot. The use cases were really personalizing content, personalizing rewards, because people are motivated by different things, personalizing based on intent. That's our job, that consumer experience. And the carrier will take the other side of the data and go look at, what does that mean in terms of underwriting 2.0, especially continuous underwriting? What does that mean in terms of servicing maybe a specific population, maybe a specific diabetic population, maybe a specific type of people in specific postal codes, zip codes? Like, it's kind of interesting because it's not really about selection anymore either. It's really about the human-centric. We talk about data for good. We talk about how do we use the data with the intention of helping the person versus the pixel tracking on Google and Facebook, where it's just like, how do I get you to buy more things, right? That is not helpful, where we as an industry have an intention to help people with their overall health, overall longevity, overall financial planning. So I think that's the intention, that the augmentedness of creating that overall data recommendation structure, as well as how we do the handoffs. So I'm glad Clement talked about change management. That's been a huge part of the work that we have with carriers. How do we hand off that conversation with a human? People are now having Zoom calls. Like, my husband basically bought his life insurance completely, no fluid, nobody came to our house, nobody wanted that. Talking to an advisor, but we needed to have that advisor conversation. And I'm a researcher, so I totally didn't interfere in his whole buying process. And he went down the route with like 4 or 5 different carriers and digital products and things like that. I just kind of watched from the sidelines as he made his decisions. But it's really amazing to see what, in the end, it's about the choice. It's a choice the individual makes, and we as a data architects, experienced architects, can be intentional about how we set it up and to make our jobs easy, how we set it up to make it useful for the end person that's using it, be it an advisor, a carrier person doing the analytics, or the end consumer, and make it really fun.
Thanks for that, Jane and Clement. Like the ideas around intent, understanding intent, human-centric design, and how that informs, what is truly valuable in these types of solutions is data science may only be 20-25% of the effort, and the remaining 75 is all the various facets of making it real that you've all shared. So thanks for that. Maybe building on the talent dimension, because we are talking about augmented intelligence. Is often the most pressing concern on executives and team leaders' minds. So not only in terms of the impact AI will have on employees and what it means for the future of or war on talent, my hypothesis is that people will continue to be a core part of the adoption and delivery model and journey enabled by these timely insight, but assisted by these intelligent machines. We also know this, because the space is evolving so rapidly, the workforce will continually be challenged to learn new skills. And we're seeing that dialogue shift to thinking about hiring for capabilities rather than skills, and hiring people who are more adaptable learners, for example. So maybe a question back to you, Abhay, and maybe Clement, you can jump in as well. As organizations transform their operating models and a bit of what you've experienced and embed these systems of intelligence, what do you believe are those enduring human capabilities that roles like adjusters and underwriters and sales agents, as you equip them with these tools, what do the organizations need to be thinking about to properly equip their talent and groom them for a shift in the roles they play and the kind of value they're able to focus on from their activities?
It's a very, very, very insightful question, and I don't think there is one really good answer to it, right? Because we're all, in my mind, trying to figure that out. I don't think people's jobs are going to go away. I think they're going to have more informed data and insight to convey better decisions. And that is going to be cool because they're going to establish a better relationship with their clients because they're able to do those sorts of things. We're going to see AI automate a lot of things, which is okay, because the monotony of some processes can very much be automated, and it reduces the risk for the company. It makes life in general a lot better. I mentioned this previously, but I do see a future where we see AI as just another technique, and you'll see an adjuster using certain techniques. We will see an underwriter using different techniques. We're going to see a voice analyst and maybe our own favorite digital assistant, Ella, using different techniques. We need what we found we needed through that entire process of even building the few models that we do have right now. We need somebody to explain the problem. We need a translator. And we struggled with that. So first we said we'd put a business person, we'll put somebody who understands this technology really, really well together and hope for the best. And it felt like one of those forced dating games because it never worked out. So we started looking at people who had the ability to understand, they understood their business well enough and could explain what they were looking for in terms of an outcome. That way, we were able to get the technology people still who needed to do some of it, because the tools aren't there yet. There's still some technical work that needs to be done. And that way we were able to sort of partner people up well. So let me ask the question, okay, this is how this is going to roll for the next little while. How do we get as many people as we need to in the business thinking this way so that they have the ability to translate what they want and understand what type of outcome they want with respect to how they need to use it because the technology people need to understand a little bit of the business needs to understand a little bit of the technology. Only then this whole thing is going to work. Otherwise, it doesn't. And then we said we should train, and we should give people some time. So one thing we did wrong was we sent everybody on training when we started our big migration to AWS. And then the migration kind of went on for 3 or 4 months or whatever. And by the time we were done, people forgot what they had learned. So it was really important for us to make sure that we could, if you train, you give them something immediately after that they can work on so they can put to use what they have learned. And if you don't have that, don't train them at that point. Right? Just stagger it in such a way. But I do think, we need to build this capacity in our schooling system today. Because if we don't build it at that level, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, we're not going to have enough in terms of supply to really do what we want. And if I was to reflect on what my biggest concern would be when it's cyber security and on the data side, it's how are we going to build that capacity? Like how are we going to build a supply model that's going to help us?
I mean, do you want to,
Andrew?
Yeah, maybe Clement, if you want to jump in on some of the roles that have been impacted or changed, and how you've navigated some of the training and upskilling needs and requirements as some of these solutions come to life. And then I think following that, we'll pivot to, in the last 5 minutes, a very important question, some of the chat you're seeing around bias and ethics and risks associated with some of these models. So we'll come to that, but maybe Clement on training and role clarity and upskilling. Any thoughts on sort of your experience and observations?
Well, I've had conversations with our frontline workers, which are the financial advisors and the insurance and salespeople, talking about how do you see your future in the world where you have all this machine learning and artificial intelligence. And the answer is the job that is crucial, that is left for them, is manage emotions. So you think about a financial advisor, it is now not so much about finding the right investment, but convincing the client to keep the course and manage their emotions when it's going up and down. We had a good plan, stick to it, etc. That is absolutely something that will never, not in the foreseeable future, be done by AI. And I can talk also about the roles of the actuaries. So it's more on the back end side. Actuaries have started by being mathematicians, and now their expectations from them is that they're engineers, they're hydrologists, they have to do geographical analytics, geoanalytics, etc. So our challenge at the beginning has been that there was research and innovation on one side, and it was not connecting with the day-to-day operations such as pricing and underwriting, etc. And we changed our governance so that the success of any innovation project or any research is defined by how it translates into the business as usual. And that governance change has enabled us to really transform the role of actuaries.
Thanks, Clement. In the last couple of minutes, I know there's been questions in the Q&A around the sort of ethical use of data. So how can we be sure that insurance companies are not using, this vast amounts of data and just overfitting or biasing and rolling into production? And maybe the broader topic on the pertinent ethical and risk considerations as sophistication levels of these AI systems and tools rise, and how might organizations prepare to address these emerging risks around bias, fairness, explainability, and trust? Maybe Clement, if you can continue down that path, and then we'll wrap up with any final comments from Abe and Jane on the topic.
Well, so I would say that it's people. It is still, at least for an organization like ours, that has incomplete data, that doesn't have the scale that a Google or et cetera has, is still the oversight of people on machine learning models that allow us to mitigate the model risk. For now, that's what we have. That's what we do.
Yeah, some guidance on that. You know, so, I guess 2 years ago, I worked with the CIO Council, put together a paper on ethics in AI. And you know, one of the things, this is a big concern at that point. Still a concern. And so we decided to put something that would be guidance or best practices around that. So I would recommend, you know, if you're interested, just go to the CIO Council and search for ethics in AI. They have a bunch of publications. This is one of them. And you know, we talk about a bunch of things. On the Sun Life side, we have we've created a bunch of sort of policies that all our models and things like that need to sort of fall within. There is the we have a it's known as the AI analytics kind of end user computing guide. So there's one of those, and that talks to, you know, types of tests you need to have in place for bias and et cetera, et cetera. And then we also have their data principles with respect to how we govern and manage data for clients, and those are published on our website. We all our models, all our analysis, we need to adhere by them across the board. So it's almost like a code of conduct for data. And I think it's a good way of going about it, because you can't go through every single model and every single analysis and dissect it. Like, you have to get people culturally to a point where they behave a certain way. With that, I'll stop. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're at time. Maybe I'll wrap it here, because it's a fascinating space. I wish we had another hour to continue chatting on various topics that we weren't able to cover today. But hopefully that gave an appreciation to the group on the various practical applications, considerations, and opportunities in the market when we think about the role of augmented intelligence in our industry. So with that, thank you very much, Abhay, Clement, Jane, for joining us in this exciting panel, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care now.
Thank you, Mukul,
Wow.
Jane, and Abhay. Great panel. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. We now have a 30-minute break. Make some time to visit the sponsor booths, the water cooler, and also the one-on-one chats. We have about over 200 meetings set already, more than 200. They went up all the time. So take advantage of Brella and set up meetings and make deals. Next on the agenda is InsurTech North's Wolfpack Startup Pitch Competition that you do not want to miss. We'll begin at 2:30 Eastern sharp. Be sure to join a few minutes ahead of time to ensure you don't miss anything. So see you there.